This conference will now be recorded.
So we will record this and post this on our website later. So thank you for joining me in another seminar about different modules of IGEMS. Today we're going to look at the SignMaker module. So there's usually a lot of interest when you get into waterjet cutting for making signs or converting graphics into files that you can cut. And that's the purpose of the SignMaker module. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Let's see that one. All right, so now you should all be seeing my IGEMS screen here. So the SignMaker module, if you purchase this, is on the Tools tab. So click onto here. I've got a few different modules on here. CAM Tools is also an optional module, which is often quite helpful to use in conjunction with the SignMaker module. So we usually want to get both of those together. So take a look first at SignMaker is made up of then in turn 3 different areas. FontTracer allows you to convert text to something that you can cut. So we'll start with this one here. Click on this and this little window comes up, and in this window is a listing of all the Truetype fonts that you have loaded on your system. So if there's a font that you want to use that you don't see here, you can just go Google whatever font you want, Truetype font, install it, and then it'll show up here on this list. So I'll take a look first at a Arial font. So you can choose the font, and then over here you've got a couple different options as far as how you want the text to go across the screen. If I just do a linear cursor, it's just going to go in a straight line across whatever, wherever I start typing, it'll just go straight across there. So I'll put our cap locks on here, or jet. So that would be a linear cursor or linear text. So at this point, you can't really do anything with it as far as trying to create a part. If I go to my CAM tab and I try to create a part and I try to select this, nothing happens. So when you first start using that, that can be a little bit confusing. First, you have to explode the font. So click on the explode icon. I've got mine up here as a quick click, or on the CAD tools, click on explode, drag a box around this, and now you can do things with it as far as creating a toolpath and things out of it. So if I want those letters to drop out, draw a rectangle around there, and we've got that. Now, of course, situation like this, these A's would be, the middle of the A, R, and D would be dropping out. So there's a handy tool on the CAM tools area to help with that, to basically create a stencil if you don't have a stencil font. So if I go to the CAM tools subdirectory here, there's this polyjoin command, which is quite handy. And when you start this command down here at the bottom, it'll prompt you to specify width. And I can either click 2 points, or if I know what I want my width of my little joining tab here to be, I'll just type in 030 and then specify first point. So that's where you basically want the this little joiner to start at. And right now my ortho is not on. F8, turn my ortho on and drag that straight down and connects all that. So then we can do the same thing over here and over here. So that's a very handy tool when you're doing letters and things like this. So then if we go back and create our part, then those things won't drop out. So that was the linear cursor. The other option there was a object cursor. So the object cursor, you can have your text follow something. So I'll just draw a circle here and go back into the tools area, back to FontTracer, and instead of doing linear cursor, can choose object cursor, and at the bottom it says pick object, and wherever I click is wherever the text is going to start, and then it wants to know what side of this object that we want the text to be on. If I want the text to be inside, I would click here. I want the text to be on the outside, I left click out here, and then as I start typing, the text will follow that arc. So you can get a little bit more fancy if you want to do spline. So I can do something like this in here. And I'll just do something like that. And go back to my FontTracer object cursor, follow this object on this side here, and then it will follow that curve around there. And then the other button here, you have height, so that just determines the height that you want for that text. So, and then again, once you've got it at this point here, go back, explode it, and then you can add your toolpath and such to it. So there's also things in here like symbols. Click on the symbols area. You scroll down, you can see if there's any fun little symbol things that you can cut. There's wingdings, things like that, based on, again, what fonts you have loaded on your system. I've downloaded a stencil font myself. So we scroll up a little bit. There we go, stencil. So this is, again, just one that I downloaded off the web, Truetype font, and then you've got a stencil that you can very easily use. So that's basically it for FontTracer. Pretty simple there. And then the image tracer starts to get a little bit more fun stuff. Click on this, and this dialog box comes up, and you can click on the open button here, and we can import either BMP, JPEG, or PNG files. So I've got some different examples here. So a lot of these people just go, again, Google search for an image. For example, I was just doing one for Leprechaun, being St. Patrick's Day will be coming up here in a month. So search for it. I'll usually, in Google, search for things, go into the tools area, and you can do things like filter things down for color. So usually I'll filter it down for black and white, filter it down for largest one possible. Labeled for reuse is always good. Always want to respect the whatever rights might be assigned to some of these images. And then when you see something that you want, you can basically click on it, save it, and then bring it in. So for example, this golfer here did something like that. So select what you want, click on open, and it brings you into this this preview window here. So depending on the quality of the image, you may need to use this little slider bar up here, which will basically darken or lighten the image and filter out some residue that you may not want to bring in with the file. So I'm just going to leave this one here right at 50 where it started. And invert allows you to decide whether this is basically going to be an inside or an outside cut, or you can do that later. So if I just leave it as that, that's good. Smoothing, it'll basically do a curve fit through the points to smooth things out. And I'll show you an example of that here next. So you bring it in, and then you can go through and you can smooth edges out and things like that. So first thing I'll usually do when I bring something in like this is, again, on the Cam Tools area, I'll use this cleanup button here, and this will help to reduce the number of points that are in the file. So click on cleanup, and then down at the bottom it says specify tolerance, and I'll usually start with a tolerance of 0. So that means it's just going to remove any duplicated entities. So it filtered out a few points there. And then what you can do is slowly do that a couple more times and bump up the tolerance. So if you do 5 thousandths, if there's any points basically within 5 thousandths of another, it'll kind of filter some of those out. So again, there aren't as many points. So we went from 1,143 segments in this to 153. So it'll be a little bit easier to work with, probably a little bit smoother cut result. Once you've cleaned that up a little bit, there's also this handy edge fix command. So this can be used to smooth out curves and things. So if we come in here and we want this to be maybe not so pronounced, I can basically click 2 points and drag an arc out here and click when I've got it how I like it. So this is used quite a lot when you're doing this this sort of work. So click a couple points and drag it out there. I've got my snaps on. I can turn those off if I want to have a little more flexibility there. So that's a fairly simple one. Go back in here, do a couple other examples. Take a look at this bore one here. So in this one here, I'm not going to use the smoothing. I'm going to turn this off. Actually, I'll do it twice. I'll do it once with the smoothing on and once with the smoothing off. So with the smoothing on, and I'm going to just change the color on this so we can distinguish between the two that I'll bring in here. And also to make it easier to move around on my CAD tab, I can use this group command and I can group this all together as one entity. So if I do want to move this, I can just click on here and it selects everything versus having to select all the different parts that are in there. So if I go back to Image Tracer, do the same file, but this time turn off the smoothing, just so you can see the difference. And we'll just change this one. I could leave it as white. I'll just change it to red for fun, and I'll go ahead and group that one together. All right. So now if I move this and come down here, and we'll zoom in a little bit, try to get this as close as I can here. So you'll see there'll be some areas here where the red was the one that wasn't smooth versus the yellow is, and there'll be areas where it's going to basically do a cleaner fit coming through here and just make it look a little bit smoother when you go to cut that, like up here. So that's the smoothing when you bring that in. And then there's also things like somebody can just take a picture of a part and you can work with that. So, or they can put it on a flatbed scanner. We have a lot of customers who have light boxes, and they'll make toolkits for aerospace. So they've got to cut out foam inserts to put all the tools in, so they can make sure that once they're done repairing the engine, that all the tools are in the right place. So they'll have a light box, backlit, opaque plastic, and lay the tools down on top of that, and then create their foam cutouts for all the different tools. So here's a good example where the slider at the top can come in handy. So I can just basically slide this until I've got somewhat of a dark edge going around the outside of the part, and that looks okay about there. So, and then what we'll do is we'll bring that in, and then we can do some additional cleanup on that. And I got my smoothing on. All right, so this stuff here, of course, I can just delete. There's some extra junk here I can just delete. And then we've got these beautiful, what are supposed to be round holes. Now, hopefully you either know what the diameter of one of these holes is supposed to be, or you've got some sort of scale in here that you can scale things down appropriately. So if I just try to roughly measure what this hole is right now, turn my snaps back on, over here somewhere. So maybe these are supposed to be 1 1/4 inch diameter holes. A couple things I can do here. First of all, I can just draw a circle that's 1 1/4 inches. Huge flange, I guess. And then on the Tools tab, we have this Replace option, and you can use this to replace all these ugly things with nice round holes here. So click on Replace. At the bottom, it'll prompt me to specify source objects, so that's what I do want them to look like. And then specify target objects, so I can go through and use whatever selecting tool I need to select all the different holes here that I want to replace. And then we'll hit enter, and then we'll have nice round holes there. So that's pretty handy. And then also here, this would be a good example of where we'd use this edge fix tool. So click a couple points here, drag this out somewhere, and clean that up quite a bit. So we'll do a couple here. So with this work, obviously, it just depends how much time that you want to put into these things to make them look good. Sometimes it might be something in-house you don't care so much about. You could do it in a few minutes. Other times for a customer, you might want to spend some more time on it and make it look real good. So that's basically how that would work. And then here's one I just drew on a piece of paper this morning. So again, we can, this one here, we got good contrast. So it's all about the contrast between the dark and the white that are, the black and the white that are going to make this easier or more difficult. So the better the contrast, the easier your life is going to be. So this here, because of the width of the line, we've got what's two different lines here. So we can just select which one we want to delete. And then again, we can start replacing entities here. So if I measure across here, and right now that's measuring that at 26.9 inches, and let's say this is supposed to be 2-inch diameter. Got a little junk here I can get rid of. I can use, let me just go ahead and do the circle first. I'll do a circle again, and I'll make it 2-inch diameter, and I'll use my replace command, and that's my source object. Actually, sorry, before I do that, let me scale it down here first. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to draw a circle, and rather than doing a circle with center and diameter, I'm going to do a 3-point circle. So I can click somewhere here, here, and roughly there. So I've got that circle that is at the same scale as the outside, and now I can use this as a reference to scale this down. So on my CAD tab, I can go to Transform and go to Scale, select Objects, we'll scale that down. Base point, I'll just hit Enter, and then specify new distance. I'm going to use this R option. So if you've watched one of the previous seminars, you'll know what the R does. If not, R is a reference where you can basically give it 2 points and tell it what that distance is supposed to be. So I'm going to press R for reference, and then specify distance. So I'm going to click on this quadrant, and then I'm just going to type in what that diameter should be. So that's going to be a 2-inch diameter, and then everything is scaled down proportionally from there. So now if I check my diameter on this, lo and behold, we've got a 2-inch diameter hole in the middle here, and the rest of this was scaled down in proportion. So that's how that can work. And this one here, we'll just show you, we'll do an invert on this one. So now when I bring this in, it's basically already got like an outside cut around here. You can also do things, use that poly join again. If I go to make a part out of this, then this part of the cloud is going to fall out of there. If I want to keep that in there, again, I can go back to the Cam Tools submenu here, poly join, set my width of my tab, call it 60 thou, and then click across a couple points here to join things together. So let's see what we got next here. So this is just one that I downloaded. So that one's nothing too special. This one here just is to show an example of how if you have some other colors mixed in, it can make life a little bit harder, or quite a bit harder, depending on what's in there. So because of this blue area in here, if I try to use this, I can use this slider and kind of bring things across, but then I might end up losing other details that I actually wanted. So if you can get a nice clean black and white image, high quality file from your customer, then again, that'll make your life a lot easier. And then wanted to show a couple other ones on this one. We'll come back to that here in a bit. If we go to image, if you can't get a good black and white image, then one option is to actually just use the image as it is and work off of that. So for example, we wanted to make a nice foam insert for our toolbox out on our machine. So laid out all the different wrenches in the toolbox, took a picture of them, put a scale in there so we can reference off of that when we work off of it. And then with that, we're able to create our foam cutout for the various tools. So the basic idea how this can work, I'll grab this one here. So this brings the file in as it is, and then you can work with it from here. So first thing I'd probably do is scale this down. So again, go back to my CAD command, scale, and I'm going to scale this down. Base point, whatever, new distance, do R for reference, and then just depending on how particular I want to be about this, click here, click somewhere over here, and 1, and then that should be the proper size now. So if I measure from about here to here, 14 inches, that sounds about right. So then what you can do is use your various CAD tools and draw your geometries around that. So you can either use lines and arcs, or you can use spline commands, pretty handy. Because with that, you can just basically go all the way around the object in one command. And again, just a matter of how precise you want to be about this. I'll do this relatively quickly here, since you don't want to spend 15 minutes or so watching me be incredibly particular about this. So we'll rough this out here. And nice long straight stretch. then we'll bring this back to turn on my snaps. Nope, snaps on, next point, end point. There we go. So then at the spline command, we can just add our tangents to get this how we want it. And then I'll just have to close this up here. I'm just going to drag this point over to here. So then you've got that, and then you can work with that. So that's how you can do things like that. Another way that that image tracer can be used is if you've got something that you maybe want to fit on top of a particular piece of material. So I've actually got a different drawing here. Let's see here, open. Let's see, find that file here. Oops. Up a couple more levels. All right, so this was a situation where customer gave us a blank of material that we were supposed to cut a part out of, and I took a picture of that. Again, I've got my scale in here. Use some CAD commands to draw an arc around here, a couple lines so that I could create a fixture to put the part, the material into, and then cut the part out of. And then you can also use the same type tool to make sure that this is actually going to fit onto here. So I worked off of a 3D model that they had given us, which is this image here. And what you can do is basically move this, or I'll move it, could copy it, whatever, and bring this on over here. And I'll just turn my snaps off. And then you can kind of place it and verify that it is going to fit on there. Now, of course, the way I took the picture, it's a little bit rotated. You can pop that on there. Right now, that part is now behind my image on the CAD tab. It's a little bit hidden, a little obscure location here. If you go to View, you have the option to bring something to the front or send it to the back. So if I click on this and go to this View submenu, send to back, and wait for it. There we go. Okay, so now I can see this, and then I can rotate it or do whatever I need. And so we'll rotate a little bit, keep original, no, I'll move that down a little bit. So it's another area where the image tracer area of the SignMaker module can come in handy. And then one other example I wanted to show you here. And if anybody does have any questions or whatever, feel free to type them into the comments area. So here's something that's already gone through Image Tracer, or maybe the customer got it directly from the customer like this, whichever case. Sometimes when you're doing work like this, you'll go to create your part. And so I'm telling it I'm cutting this with a 1030 nozzle combination out of some thin steel. Go to create this. I've got my geometry optimization box turned on, and it's looking at a maximum tool diameter of 0.042. And when I go to add my tool path to this, there's going to be a couple areas here where, based on that 042 diameter, assumed tool diameter, it's looking in here, not able to get into that area. And the basic idea is IGEMS doesn't want to actually cut into the material. So that's what geometry optimization does. It'll look at the gaps and try to figure out if you can get through there without cutting into the part. So if I measure across there, that gap is approximately 0.32 or so. And there was another gap over on the other side of about the same width. So you've got a couple different options to get around that. First thing is, when I go to create that part, I can turn off geometry optimization, and that basically tells IGEMS, I don't care if I cut into my part a little bit, just do it. And we can see here now it can get through there. Now, since I told it I'm using a 1030 nozzle combination, it actually wouldn't cut into that part there. It might be very, very small amount. If I were to change to a 1040, or excuse me, 1440, yeah, 1040, that makes sense. Let me just delete that whole, or we'll just explode this again here, or do an undo. All right, so we're still at 1440. Turned off my geometry optimization. And now what you see, so this arc here, this red line here represents the center of the toolpath as it's coming back this way, and this one represents it coming this way. And if I draw in a 40 thou diameter circle here to basically represent my stream width, then we would see that we would cut into the part a little bit. Now, for an artistic thing, might not matter, but that's what's going on, and that's how you can kind of get through that if you are doing an artwork thing like this, and it doesn't maybe matter so much. A couple of other ways to get around that. Let me switch back to my 1030 nozzle combination. So there's a couple areas that you can look at. If you go into your machine settings, click on Edit Machine, go down to the geometry option. That 042 that it was using for the geometry optimization was based off of this number here, maximum tool diameter. So if I am using an 030 combo, I can just type in 30 thou for the maximum tool diameter, and then you'll see now this geometry optimization is set to 030. Turn that on, and then it should be able to get into those areas now. Now this one here, I scaled this down 20% just to show a little bit more added complexity, just because, hey, that's what this is all about. So if I go to create this part, got my geometry optimization turned on, looking at 030, that's all good because that's what I'm using for my nozzle. And all right, can't get in there. All right, well, I'll try Jeff's trick again that he showed me on that webinar because that looked pretty cool. So I'll just go into my machine settings and come down geometry. Yeah, I'll fake it out a little bit. I'm going to tell it that my tool diameter is 025. My dimensions are off by 10 thousandths. Who cares? It's just a sign. Right, go to create my parts. Everything should be good. It's like, wait a minute, why is that 030? I typed in 025. Jeff said that that would change based on that. Well, there's actually another setting that it will look at. So if I cancel out of here, and under this process area, you'd probably never think to look here, cutting parameters, this is basically telling it the stream width. So if this since I have this mixing tube box checked, and I'm telling it that I'm using a 30 thousandths tool diameter, then this basically overrides what I had in that geometry field in the machine settings. So I can uncheck this box, and then I can type in a smaller tool diameter, 025. And now when I go to create the part, then it's got the geometry optimization of 025 there. So those are a couple settings that you can look at if you get into a sticky situation like that. So that's basically all that I had today. A little bit shorter one, but hopefully it was chock full of information for everybody. As usual, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to email me, jday@wardjet.com. If there's any topics that you'd like me to cover in future webinars, always love to hear from you. So thanks for your time and have a great day.